Hello, everybody, and welcome to Dot to Dot. Today, I'm going to talk about the last episode of The Curse of Oak Island, where towards the end, they brought in archaeoastronomer Professor Andriano Gaspanni. And through his study and his discipline of archaeoastronomy, he was able to basically determine when Nolan's Cross may have been set in stone, and he gave a date of around 1200 AD. Now we know this corresponds to the stone paved area in the swamp, which was dated through a twig of through carbon 14 dating of 1200 AD, and also the stone well on lot 26 was also dated around that time period. Now, this corresponds to Zena theory, which states that the Knights Templar came to North America around that time. And it also gives us a little insight, and I'll show you later on, of through the sequencing of how these alignments were used to place the stones of Nolan's Cross on Oak Island. The sequence is very important because it corresponds to the Zena-Halpern map. But archaeoastronomy it's a pretty early discipline in academia. I found that it may have started around in the 1960s, which centered around Stonehenge. One of the more recent finds through archaeoastronomy was last year on October 19th, where they found a medieval parchment in a monastery that was from a monastery in Egypt. And underneath this Christian text, they found the faint writings of another text, which they are assuming that it could be a lost star catalog from an ancient Greek mathematician and astronomer called Hipparchus. And it's believed to be one of the earliest attempts to map the entire sky. So astronomy goes way back, and the mapping of the sky goes way back. But this is perhaps one of the earliest written documents that would ascribe to that discipline. So the way they find these dates is they use a phenomenon called precession, which is where the Earth moves around its axis 1 degree every 72 years. And the position of the stars, which are fixed to one another relatively, they slowly shift through the sky. So they're able to use this method or track this method of the stars and make a determination by the years of when this ancient astronomer made these observations. And they find that this text that they found basically dates back to about 129 BC, which is basically the time of Hipparchus. And he was an astronomer, a geographer, a mathematician, and the founder of geometry. And he also discovered the precession of the equinoxes. So this is a big find for the people in archaeoastronomy, and it's very interesting. So what about the stars that are in this study that Andriano Gaspanni told us about? And one of the stars that he calls out is called Bellatrix, and it is the third brightest star and the easy to recognize constellation of Orion the Hunter, and it makes up the left shoulder. So we're going to find that all these stars are going to be very relevant, bright, easy to recognize stars. And most of them are rising, so they're going to be close to the horizon where you can make a good sighting. So the next star is Antares, which is the brightest star in the constellation of Scorpio. The next star is Alphard, which is the brightest star in the constellation of Hydra. And it is a giant star, and it is cooler than the sun, but it's more luminous. So it's brighter, at least not to us, but as far as brightness goes in relative to one another, it's brighter than our sun. So also Alphard is called the lone star, and it's down here by itself in relationship to the constellation Leo. And I'll show you how this relates to another star that is in this list of stars. So Capella is one of the brightest stars in the sky, and it is the crown jewel of Auriga and the charioteer. And like many other stars, Capella appears to be a single object, but it's actually a multi-star system, primarily two yellow giant stars. So here's Capella in this constellation of Auriga. Then we have Fomalhaut, and it's the brightest star in the southern constellation of Pisces Austrinus, called the Southern Fish. And it's also one of the brightest stars in the night sky. So it's going to be very easy to do an alignment through that star. The other one is Arcturus, and Arcturus is the brightest star in the northern constellation of Bootes, and it is the third brightest star of individual stars in the night sky, but it's the brightest star in the northern celestial hemisphere. Now, Arcturus, you're going to find, is going to be the star that basically gives us the alignment of the axis of Nolan's cross. So it's a very important star. It's also part of what's called the spring triangle, not to be confused with the summer triangle, but it is the spring triangle has to do with the Regulus, which is in the constellation of Leo. And so the constellation of Leo is also very, if you remember this little picture here, it is close to Alphard, and it has a relationship to Alphard. So this Arcturus is a very prominent star in the sky, and it's very easily found, and Alphard is very easily found through it. So when we look at the picture that was presented on Oak Island, that was done by Andriano Gaspanni, we find that this alignment has a sequence. In other words, you would have to know at least where one of these, where would you start? You have to start with one stone. And when you analyze this, you find that the most probable stone, or really the most, the stone that you really have to start with, is cone D. And cone D would be positioned in such that it would be on the line of rising of Arcturus, but it also would have to be an equal angle between the rising of Capella and the rising of Alphard. And this would set the angle between cone C and cone D and cone D and cone B. Now, once the cone C angle has been realized, then you can do the setting of Fomalhaut and Fomalhaut gives us where it intersects the rising of Arcturus. It gives us the position of cone E. And cone E then can go to the rising of Bellatrix, and then it sets in position cone B, which basically would give us a distance here of 720 feet, which is what the Fred Nolan measured between cone C and cone B. And cone A, of course, is the rising of Antares, and that would give us that alignment, also giving us a lock point for cone C. And cone A would be along that line of the rising of Arcturus. So it is my opinion that cone D would be where you would start this sequence of alignments. And this sequence of alignments does correspond to the map from Zena Halpern, the Zena Halpern map. So if we go to Google Earth and if we look at this, is basically the interpretation that I have come up with, and Olivier from Oak Island Research, who basically came up with the deciphering of the Oak Island map. This is the alignments that through the clues on the map, and I'll show you that in a minute, where you can see it comes to cone D. Now these lines are from the clues on the map. And the clues on the map are up here, which is this little straight line tick mark coming off of what we suppose is Round Island. And it's also connected with this little foot here, which is a similar symbol that is located on the quadrant, the east part of the quadrant right here. And you can see this. And what I determined this could mean is that we're taking a measurement from this, whatever comes out of the bark, which is right here, and this alignment with the bark down the center comes to, they intersect at this point. Now at this point right here, that is what is cone D. And when this map is oriented and scaled according to the 1347 PED, then it is and oriented by the east-west line from the Vera line and Frog Island, it comes to cone D. So cone D is the start of Nolan's Cross, and then through cone D, you measure from this distance to here, which is the same as the distance that is on the quadrant. This is the measurement you take from the quadrant to the center of the quadrant here. This distance is the same as the distance from cone D to the headstone. And it is perpendicular to the line that bisects these angles. So since cone D is the start of the Zena Halpern map, or the Oak Island map, and the information that was given to us by Gaspanni, saying that cone D was basically an alignment of those stars, which was, what was it? The rising of Capella and the rising of Alphard, basically tells me that this right here, this star alignment, was the beginning, But since it was later on in time that these stars would no longer align with cone D, that they would have to come up with a different way to communicate the alignment and the position of cone D. Now, the beginning of this mystery, according to the vault theory, starts with Nolan's cross. And Nolan's cross is the index of all the geometry that comes off it to find the entrances that are needed to be found in order to solve the mystery on Oak Island. Very interesting. I was very encouraged by that last episode. And I think it gives us just another step on validating Zena Halpern's map. It also gives a credibility to perhaps that the Knights Templar, or at least someone that belonged to the Knights Templar, basically may have been part of this mystery also. So, thank you for watching. Like and subscribe, and I'll talk to you later.